Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary is not a scandalous romance, nor is it a simple story of infidelity. It is a terrifyingly precise deep dive into human vanity. It is a brutal demonstration of what happens when a mind is thoroughly poisoned by romantic delusions, attempting to fight the crushing gravity of a boring reality with overextended desires. Too many readers treat this novel as the tragic romance of a passionate woman trapped in a dull marriage. Today, we strip away that superficial sentimentality. We will look at this masterpiece through an unflinching lens to see how an ordinary girl orchestrated her own financial and spiritual execution. The tragedy begins not with a lover, but with a pile of cheap romance novels. The protagonist, Emma, is a prosperous peasant's daughter raised in a convent. She is beautiful, she has learned to play the piano, and her head is entirely filled with historical fantasies, weeping willows, and noble knights who die for love. She despises the coarse reality of her father's farm. She craves the high society drama of Paris. Then comes Charles Bovary, a dull, submissive, and thoroughly mediocre country doctor. He looks at Emma and sees a goddess. Emma looks at Charles and sees her escape plot. They marry. But the moment the wedding dress is put away, the trap snaps shut. Charles is a man who is perfectly content with a warm dinner, a quiet evening, and a predictable medical practice. He has no ambition, no poetry, and no mystery. Emma looks at her husband sleeping with his mouth open and realizes with horror, this is it. This is her life. Her grand romantic expectations have crashed headfirst into the bloodless reality of a country kitchen. The very air she breathes feels heavy with domestic boredom and the crushing weight of ordinary days. The turning point of Emma's universe arrives with a single invitation to a ball at the Marquise's estate. For one night, Emma steps into the pages of her novels. She breathes the air of true wealth. She tastes iced champagne, glides across polished floors in the arms of a viscount, and rubs shoulders with men whose titles are as old as France. It is a world of pure velvet, silk, and effortless elegance. The ball lasts only a few hours, but it leaves Emma with a permanent, incurable addiction. When she returns to her drab house, reality is no longer just boring, it is an insult. The wallpaper looks cheaper, the food tastes worse, and Charles's simple contentment makes her want to scream. She preserves that green silk cigar case as if it were a holy relic. She begins to cultivate a lifestyle of artificial luxury she cannot afford. She orders Parisian fashion magazines, buys maps of the capital, and spends her days imagining streets she will never walk. She tries to cure her spiritual starvation with material consumption, unaware that her desires are expanding exponentially, far beyond the boundaries of her husband's meager income. She is no longer just a bored housewife. She has become a consumer of illusions. She has tied her happiness to the price tag of a world that does not even know she exists. And in her desperate search for a catalyst to break the monotony, she opens her door to the first wolf who promises her a drama. To fill the void of her marriage, Emma turns to the oldest distraction in history, searching for an escape through illicit romance. First comes Rodolphe, a wealthy landowner who decodes Emma's vulnerability instantly, seducing her with the recycled clichés of poetry. Later comes Léon, a young clerk who shares her superficial taste for art and melodrama. Let us deconstruct these affairs without romantic illusion. Emma does not love these men as human beings. She loves the idea of being a tragic heroine in an illicit romance. She turns her life into an expensive theatrical production. To meet her lovers in the city, she rents private carriages, stays in luxury hotels, and buys them expensive gifts. And this is where the cold machinery of commerce enters her life. To fund her theatrical romance, Emma falls into the clutches of Monsieur Leroux, a predatory local merchant. Leroux is the true architect of her financial ruin. He flatters her vanity, anticipating her every desire, and whispers that a lady of her status shouldn't worry about money. He introduces her to the fatal trap of installment plans and promissory notes. Emma signs bill after bill, rolling over her debts, mortgaging her husband's future for silk curtains and lace handkerchiefs. Her spiritual drift is now perfectly matched by her financial fraud. She is living in a house built of paper cards, completely blind to the fact that every romantic weekend with her lover is being recorded on Leroux's ledger in solid, unforgiving numbers. The illusion disintegrates with the sudden, violent finality of a bankruptcy notice. Leroux decides it is time to harvest his crop. The rolled over bills mature, the interest has ballooned into a monster, and a court order arrives to seize and auction every piece of furniture in the Bovary household. The house of cards collapses. Emma frantically runs to the men for whom she ruined her life. She goes to Léon, begging him to steal money from his office. The young clerk panics and kicks her out. She goes to the wealthy Rodolphe, offering her body and her soul for the cash to save her house. Rodolphe looks at her tears, calculates the liability, and tells her with smooth aristocratic politeness, "I do not have it, my dear lady." The romantic knights of her books have vanished. In their place stand two practical, selfish men who have no intention of destroying their own respectability for a bankrupt mistress. Emma stands alone in the mud. She realizes the ultimate truth of her existence. Her grand, poetic passion was worth absolutely nothing in the currency of the real world. She has traded her husband's honor, her daughter's future, and her own soul for a collection of cheap fabric and faithless promises. Creditors are at the door. Charles is weeping in the parlor, and the grand romance has ended in a sordid, low-market calculation. Emma chooses the only exit strategy left for an idealist who cannot face the ledger: suicide. She breaks into the pharmacy, steals a handful of white arsenic powder, and swallows it down. She expects a clean, poetic death, like the tragic heroines of her operas, who fade away into a beautiful melody. Flaubert denies her even this final illusion. Death by arsenic is a slow, unglamorous, and agonizing somatic horror. For days, she suffers immense agony, her body contorting in spasms as she destroys herself from the inside out, while her clueless, devoted husband kneels at her bedside, weeping and praying to a God who has closed the book. Emma dies, and with her death, the true cynicism of the world reveals itself. Charles Bovary, discovering the letters of her lovers after her passing, dies of a broken heart in the garden, still refusing to blame the woman who destroyed him. Her young daughter is sent to work in a cotton mill, her future ruined before her life even truly began. Flaubert's Madame Bovary remains a monumental masterpiece because it refused to grant its characters any romantic redemption. Emma was not killed by a grand, tragic destiny. She was killed by her own inability to accept the value of an ordinary life. She thought she could buy poetry with a promissory note, but the machinery of the real world does not trade in metaphors. The ledger must always be balanced, the interest must always be paid, and beneath the polished marble and silk curtains of civilization, the raw soil of reality is always waiting to bury the dreamers who forgot how to walk on the ground.